It was supposed to be just another quiet evening in the neighborhood. The streets were calm, the street lamps dimly flickered, and the faint sound of cicadas filled the night air. For most people, it was peaceful, ordinary. But for Jaiwon, nothing about this place felt ordinary. He stood by his window, staring out at the houses across the street. They all looked identical, too identical, as if someone had copied and pasted them in place. The trimmed hedges, the neatly painted walls, the blinds pulled down at the exact same angle. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. Jaiwon leaned against the glass, a heaviness pressing down on his chest. He had only moved here a week ago, and already he felt suffocated. His neighbors smiled too politely, waved too cheerfully, and asked too many questions. It wasn't friendliness, it felt rehearsed. Like everyone was hiding something. That night, he noticed it again. The house directly across from him. The curtains fluttered, even though the windows were closed. A faint shadow passed by, tall, broad-shouldered. Jaiwon's heart skipped. He had seen that figure before, lingering by the gate, watching him. "Stop it," he muttered to himself, shaking his head. "You're overthinking." But when he turned away, he could still feel its eyes on him, following him. The next morning, the neighborhood looked the same, picture perfect. Housewives watering their lawns. Children laughing as they cycled down the street. But something gnawed at Jaiwon. He couldn't ignore it anymore. On his way to the corner store, he bumped into someone. Literally. A man tall, sharp-eyed, with dark hair that fell carelessly over his forehead. Their eyes locked. "Watch where you're going," the man muttered, his voice low, almost a growl. Jaiwon froze. The man's gaze wasn't just annoyed, it was piercing, as if he could see right through him. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then the man walked off, leaving Jaiwon standing there, heart pounding. That night, Jaiwon couldn't sleep. The same shadow moved past the curtains across the street. The same uneasy feeling returned. And this time, he was certain the man he had bumped into earlier was the one watching him. The following day felt heavier than usual. Jaiwon dragged himself out of bed, but the unease from last night hadn't left him. Even as he brewed his coffee, his gaze kept drifting to the window, across the street, where the same curtains remained shut tight. He couldn't shake the image of that man's eyes, sharp, unreadable, almost predatory. By afternoon, the weather had turned overcast, the sky gray and oppressive. Jaiwon decided to step outside, hoping fresh air would clear his mind. As he walked past rows of identical houses, he noticed something strange. Every door looked the same. Every garden looked the same. But not a single neighbor was outside today. The street that usually buzzed with the sound of sprinklers, lawnmowers, and children was silent. Dead silent. A faint shiver ran down his spine. Just then, a voice startled him. "You don't belong here." Jaiwon spun around. The man from yesterday stood a few steps away, hands buried in his pockets, watching him with that same piercing gaze. What do you mean?" Jaiwon asked, his voice trembling. The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped closer, close enough that Jaiwon could feel his presence pressing against him. There was something dangerous about the way he carried himself, yet something magnetic, too. Finally, the man muttered, "This neighborhood isn't what it looks like. You should leave before it's too late." Jaiwon's pulse quickened. "What are you talking about? Too late for what?" The man's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked toward the houses around them, as if they were listening. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, disappearing between the rows of identical homes. Jaiwon stood frozen on the spot, his coffee cup trembling in his hand. That night, the shadows returned. Only this time, they weren't limited to one house. From his window, Jaiwon saw movement behind several curtains. Dark figures pacing, standing still, peering out at him from the darkness. It was no longer just one man watching him. It was the entire neighborhood. The next morning, Jaiwon woke with dark circles under his eyes. He had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt them, those countless unseen gazes pressing down on him from across the street. He told himself it was paranoia, exhaustion. But the fear lingered. On his way to the small local market, he kept his head low, yet his ears picked up whispers. A group of housewives stood near a fence, their smiles unnaturally wide. They spoke in hushed tones, but Jaiwan could swear they were speaking about him. He's new. Doesn't know anything yet. Better keep an eye on him. The words froze his steps. When he turned to look, the women instantly smiled at him, too sweet, too forced, and waved as if nothing had happened. Jaiwan quickened his pace, his palms sweating. At the market, he grabbed a few things quickly, hoping to get home fast. But at the checkout counter, he noticed it again, the cashier's eyes. They were polite, smiling, but something flickered beneath them, cold and calculating, as though measuring him. He muttered thanks, left the store, and hurried back. But as he turned the corner to his street, he stopped dead. The man was there. The same tall figure, standing by Jaiwan's gate, waiting for him. "Why are you always?" Jaiwan started, but the man cut him off with a glare. "Do you want to survive here?" the man asked, voice low, almost a whisper. Jaiwan's chest tightened. "What do you mean by survive?" The man stepped closer, close enough that Jaiwan could see the faint scar running across his jawline. His eyes burned with an intensity that was both frightening and strangely captivating. "Don't trust anyone in this neighborhood," the man warned. Not the smiling neighbors. Not the friendly shopkeepers. Not even the children. They're all. He stopped himself, biting back the words, and glanced around sharply. Then he leaned in, his voice almost brushing against Jaiwan's ear. "They're watching you. Every second. Don't let them in." And just as quickly, he turned and walked away again, leaving Jaiwan trembling by his own gate, groceries forgotten in his hands. For the first time since moving here, Jaiwan realized something with chilling certainty: this neighborhood wasn't safe. That night, Jaiwan sat in his darkened living room, the only light coming from the faint glow of the street lamps outside. He hadn't turned on any lights, he didn't want them to know he was awake. But no matter how still he sat, he could feel them. Watching. Always watching. The curtains across the street shifted again. A silhouette stood there, motionless, like a shadow carved into the window. Jaiwan's breath caught. It wasn't just one house anymore. One by one, curtains along the row of identical homes quivered, revealing figures standing behind them. Every house. Every window. Dozens of eyes staring at him from the darkness. His heart pounded so loudly he thought they might hear it. He shut his curtains, pulled them tight, but it didn't help. He could still feel their gaze burning into him, suffocating him. Suddenly, a sharp knock rattled his door. Jaiwan jumped, nearly dropping the cup of tea in his hands. His mind screamed at him not to open it, but his legs moved on their own. Slowly, hesitantly, he reached for the knob. "Don't!" The voice came from behind him. Jaiwan spun around, there he was. The man. Standing half in the shadows of the hallway, his expression grim. How did you get inside?" Jaiwan stammered, panic flooding him. The man didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer, his presence overwhelming the tiny space of the entryway. His hand closed around Jaiwan's wrist, firm and unyielding. "If you open that door," the man whispered, "you'll never come back." The knocking grew louder. More urgent. Whoever, or whatever, was outside wanted in. Jaiwan's knees nearly gave way. His voice shook. "What do they want from me?" The man's grip tightened. His eyes softened for just a second, and he said the words that made Jaiwan's blood run cold. "They don't want you. They want to keep you." The knocking stopped. Silence. The kind of silence that's worse than any sound. Jaiwan looked at the man, fear and confusion swirling inside him. "Who are you? Why are you helping me?" The man finally released his wrist, turning toward the window, scanning the street like a guard. "Because you're not the first one," he muttered. "And if you don't listen, you won't be the last." Jaiwan's hands wouldn't stop shaking. The man's words echoed in his head like a curse. "They don't want you. They want to keep you." He backed away, pressing himself against the wall. What do you mean by that? What's going on here? The man didn't look at him. His eyes stayed fixed on the dark street outside, scanning every movement, every shadow. His jaw clenched. This place, he said quietly, isn't a neighborhood. It's a cage. And once they've locked you inside, you never leave. Jaiwon's chest tightened. His breath came fast and shallow. He thought of the neighbors, those two wide smiles, the forced laughter, the whispers that stopped when he walked by. All this time, had they just been pretending? You're lying, Jaiwon whispered, more to himself than to the man. This is ridiculous. People don't just trap others like that. The man finally turned toward him, his dark eyes burning with a seriousness that made Jaiwon's throat go dry. You think I'm lying? Then tell me, why haven't you seen anyone new move in? Why does every family look perfect, act perfect, speak the same way? Doesn't it feel rehearsed to you? The memories hit Jaiwon like a wave. The identical houses. The synchronized routines. The whispers. He couldn't deny it. The man stepped closer, lowering his voice. They'll try to break you down. First with smiles. Then with silence. And finally, he stopped, his gaze flicking again toward the windows, with something you can't fight. Jaiwon swallowed hard, fear and curiosity twisting together inside him. Then why are you still here? If you know so much, why haven't you left? For the first time, the man's expression cracked. A shadow of guilt flickered across his face. He looked away, his voice rough. Because I couldn't save the last one. Jaiwon's heart skipped. The last one? He wanted to ask more, but before he could, the sound of creaking footsteps echoed outside his house. Both of them froze. The man's hand shot out, grabbing Jaiwon's wrist again. His grip was firm but desperate. Don't make a sound, he whispered. Through the sliver of curtain, Jaiwon saw them. Dozens of neighbors. Standing on the street. Not moving. Not blinking. Just watching his house. The silence was suffocating. And then, in unison, every porch light on the street flicked off. The street outside was swallowed in darkness. No lamps, no porch lights, only the pale shimmer of the moon outlining the row of houses. Jaiwon's breath caught in his throat. Through the curtains, he saw them. Every single neighbor stood silently in front of their homes, their faces tilted toward his window. Smiling. Waiting. His knees threatened to buckle. Why are they just standing there? What do they want from me? The man beside him didn't move. His jaw was tight, his fists clenched at his sides. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, heavy with something close to despair. They've already chosen you. Jaiwon's chest constricted. Chosen me? For what? The man's gaze slid to him, sharp and unyielding. For a moment, Jaiwon thought he saw something flicker there, not just anger, but sorrow. You'll find out soon enough, he said. Before Jaiwon could ask another question, a sudden knock, slow, deliberate, echoed through the house. It wasn't at the door this time. It came from the walls. One knock. 2. 3. The sound traveled around him, like the house itself was alive, closing in on him. Jaiwon staggered back, his pulse hammering. This can't be real. The man stepped forward, putting himself between Jaiwon and the sound. His voice was sharp, urgent. Stay behind me. From this point on, nothing will ever be the same. And in that moment, Jaiwon knew with chilling certainty this neighborhood wasn't uneventful at all. It was a nightmare he couldn't escape.